When I asked about 100 of you guys to subscribe in the last few videos, I didn't expect this. So we're coming back to punishment time. Enjoy this Pandaren now with a dumbass looking hat. Just let it embrace you. And let's do what Blizzard sometimes cannot and not fix what isn't broken. Let's ask for about 100 more of you guys because I'm totally not desperate. And with all that out of the way, enjoy the video.
I don't listen to the haters, man, I treat them like the enemy. Had a couple traitors, man, but now they know the penalty. I tell them, see you later, fam, I do not need this jealousy. I got no time for failure, man, I wanna leave a legacy. I lock in and I'm sold out, pop up for the whole crowd. I got this, I rolled out, I promise, have no doubt, I'm all in, here I go.
Death Knights, ooh, they actually ended up being a lot of fun in BFA. They started out literally feeling garbage. After the GCD changes in BFA, I tried to play them. Unholy, garbage. Frost, garbage. Blood Death Knight, have no idea, but I would imagine to be pretty garbage as well. But we recently had some changes, particularly to Unholy, as well as Frost and Blood that we really didn't need. They basically are toning back down the mobility of Death Knights, but are giving them back the anti-slows, which is an interesting way to approach the class, and it definitely feels that you are a lot less mobile. But goddamn does it feel so much fun to play. I feel like Death Knights is always one of those classes that's, I feel like at least has one specialization that's fairly easy to learn, and it just pumps out damage no matter what, and it makes you honestly feel like a badass. I feel like that was the huge appeal of Death Knights, whether you got inspired by the whole necromancer feel of Unholy, or literally the embodiment of Arthas, a pillar of frost smashing through your enemies, or very vampire-esque blood DK sucking the life out of your enemy. It's just super fun, and I feel like the edginess of this class kind of was taken away a little bit by Demon Hunters being the new edgelord, but these guys are still honestly a blast to play, especially in BFA. Let's start out with the best spec with the most fun changes, Unholy. Unholy got completely screwed by Legion. As in, they made this specialization so fun in the way that they end up being in Legion, with your artifact weapon and your playstyle and how it was so involved. When you take out the artifact weapon and all those passives, you really make the specialization nothing that it used to be. So what Blizzard did is changed your big button cooldown, and that is Apocalypse, where you stack up those debuffs on the enemy. Once you get like maximum 6, you can just cleave all of them down in a single go, just pop them at the same time, summoning the army of undead. They did, however, do something that was still weird, so they gave back Apocalypse, but they stuck Gargoyle and Frenzy on talents. Frenzy is something I remember them having back in Cataclysm. It basically speeds up your haste. Actually, you could give it to other players and it would deal damage to you, kind of ticking damage over time, but they basically brought that back as a self buff, almost like half of a duration and half the effectiveness of a Bloodlust. And I imagine it with Bloodlust together, it could be insanely strong. Then Gargoyle has exactly the same effect as the Arbiter, where the more runic power you spend, except they changed how much runic power you spend, the more of it you spend, the more damage you get from your pet. So they basically took a lot of the burst damage that you got from those big cooldowns back to the Death Knight. And they changed a lot of abilities. For example, now you have so many ways of dealing dots, diseases, miasma, you have your syphilis, you have your Ebola, you have every disease known to mankind. And if not, you haven't contracted it yet. Once you contract it, you'll probably have even more under your belt. Honestly, it's great, and I remember its ability back from Warcraft 3, when you would have the Nerubians for the Scourge, for the undead race. Nerubian hero would run around with little flies all over him, just biting enemies and putting damage over time. They basically brought that back. Now you have the swarm that comes around you, putting diseases on every enemy around. And you can also play around with that really well. And then there's even more play in terms of undead minions. Do you want to summon more minions? Do you want to just have a passive with more minions? Or do you want to buff the ones you already have? And I feel like there's just so many playstyles for this necromancer-ridden, disease-ridden playstyle of a Death Knight. I feel like they honestly breathe even more life into the specialization, even though I was honestly happy with it in Legion. I honestly enjoyed it, and I played today on stream, and I just kept trying it more and more and more, and there's so many more customizations in terms of talents. This specialization definitely went through awesome changes in BFA, and I already thought it was pretty great in Legion as is. So it's awesome to see all these spins where you have so much more creativity and so many more different playstyles, kind of what BFA has been so far, at least to me, known for, changing up your talents so you have a lot more room to play around with however you want to make your builds happen. Although please, while I do showcase you a little bit of Unholy in the dungeon, don't worry about the Arcane Mage damage. That guy is broken. Apparently that's how Arcane Mages all are right now on BFA. Nothing we can really do about it. Just please, don't mind his damage. Look at the Unholy damage. I honestly love the capabilities of the spec. You do have a little bit of this bittersweet type of appeal for it though right now, where they took abilities like Gargoyle or even Frenzy that you used to have at one point as a baseline abilities, baseline things that you could apply to yourself as buffs from back in the day. They took all of those and put them on the talents, but at least they made them a little bit more competitive against one another. And they gave you back Apocalypse. I feel like with Legion, Unholy, I remember Unholy back in Cataclysm, it was all about the Gargoyle. It was all about just buffing your pets and everything. Legion changed the playstyle completely, and it really revolved around your artifact weapon, around summoning the undead minions. And here, what they basically did is brought back what was the main core playstyle of Unholy and added other playstyles. If you really want to have your old school Unholy DK that you used to play maybe in Cataclysm back in the day, you can, sorta kinda. You can recreate it as closely as possible. But if you really want to play with the new Unholy that Legion really helped define, here we go, here are the tools, have fun, do whatever you want to do. I love how there's already 3 different trees of what kind of you can spec into. Do you want to spec into putting debuffs and popping those debuffs off of enemy? Do you want to spec into the dots and having very high, I guess, interesting mechanics in terms of dots and diseases out of all the damage over time abilities? Or do you really want to buff your undead minions? Do you want to have more undead minions? So it's almost like how you usually have 3 different aspects you can worry about. For example, Assassination, it's either about poisons, it's either about bleeds, or it's either about your own damage and capability to physically hurt somebody with daggers. With Unholy, it feels like there's so much potential and capability for you to either play with pets, diseases, or debuffs on enemies. And overall, the specialization feels so fun. It really does represent what a strength class feels like. It's very powerful. It's a little bit slow, but it is very powerful, kind of like a Frost DK in some sense. I honestly enjoyed Unholy. I am super excited about it. With the changes to Death Knight, primarily to Unholy, is something I really want to play. Speaking about Frost Death Knights feel great to play. Honestly, they feel awesome. I will be frank, they're not new. They didn't get nearly as many updates as Unholy did, and they didn't get me quite as excited, but I guess it's always nice to have a specialization that's more or less more of the same. I feel like some specs have been adjusted for BFA, some better than others, where every single talent that is in their talent row makes you feel like there's a possible build with it. There's maybe some kind of a crazy combination that you can put together and have just an insane playstyle altogether. Just some kind of a crazy wacky combo, and it just feels like so much fun. Frost didn't really get that. I still feel like there's a lot of specs and a lot of classes that are yet to be changed, and with Unholy changes, I'm kind of hoping in the back of my mind that Frost gets a few changes in order to kind of freshen it up. With Unholy, and with how some of the class design have been for classes in BFA so far, it feels like Blizzard really reinforces the whole creativity to decide how you want to play and the different builds and different potentials. So in Legion, we already know most of the builds that function, and if you have a class that has exactly the same talents and setup as from Legion, chances are you're going to play exactly the same talent setup and play the same combos. And Frost more or less does the same thing. It's effective, it does good damage, it feels good to play, it's just more of the same. And it doesn't have nearly the same creativity as the newfound, I guess, talents provide for Unholy. So if anything, I'm kind of hoping that some of the classes get that BFA upscale for them. And I'm kind of hoping that Frost does it. Besides my personal thoughts on Frost, it does good damage. It has great self-sustain. For the most part, it has exactly the same utility, except now your Death's Advance is going to be your mobility-based ability. And Ghost Walk, that you would used to do, that's a talent. So that's weird, but that's a flat across all 3 specs too. That is the only thing that really is significant for Frost Death Knight. Overall, the spec feels great. It has good damage. One of the things that I even personally feel, if you were to give a Frost DK a big old two-hander, like a big old claymore sword, or a huge axe, or a warhammer, I feel thematically it would make even more sense. Because the way Frost plays, it doesn't quite play like Legion, where you're all about, you know, quick abilities, quick succession, pow, 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 you know, procs, procs, procs. You feel a lot slower because of the GCD changes. It takes a lot more wind up. So I feel like if you were to be basically just like the Lich King, get yourself a big old two-hander weapon that you have to really wind up and swing at the enemy. Those obliterates, frost strikes, and all the other abilities, howling blast. I feel like they would just feel thematically better if you had a heavier weapon on your character. But at least that's just how I guess approach the spec, and that's just kind of how I see it. I think it'll be a lot better. You still do have the two one-handers, and they still feel very powerful. You still do a lot of good damage. It just feels so much heavier. I feel like it would just probably look better if you just had the whole two-hander instead of two one-handers. But that's just my personal appeal. Frost is great. It still does its own thing. There's not a lot of changes happen to it. And then we have Blood Death Knight. And what can I really say about Death Knights when it comes to tanking? I don't tank. The only tank I kind of sort of know how to play is Warrior in Legion, and even those guys are going through some radical changes. Tanking isn't something that I've really been committed into. It's not something I'm not really even all that interested in. I kind of like dealing damage, maybe a little bit of healing here and there, but tanking is something that I just never took seriously. So with tanking on a Blood Death Knight, I guess the only way I can tell you about it is, how was the experience? Did I feel robust? Did I feel powerful? Did I feel like I could take on anything? Did I feel squishy? How was my mobility? And Blood Death Knights felt pretty good. It felt like you are a towering inferno over the enemy. Just huge. You're slow, but you're like I guess, a battering ram. You move fairly slow, but you hit pretty hard, and you can pull a bunch of mobs together, and you just don't feel like you die ever. So when it comes to tankiness and some of the changes that are happening in BFA, Blood Death Knights felt pretty good. For me, as somebody who doesn't ever play Blood DK at all, or tanks for that matter, for me to be able to come into a dungeon setting and just start tanking mobs and not having to fear for my life, oh, maybe I'll die here, oh, maybe this will happen, it just felt pretty great. And that was enjoyable. But you gotta understand, I'm not a tank main. The only tank I know how to play, sorta kinda, is Protection Warrior, and that specialization feels uber fast right now in Legion. So once I get around to Warriors with some of the changes that actually happened to Prot, which I will be able to test out, I'll be able to actually see how that spec felt. But did Blood Death Knight feel powerful? Yes. Did it feel kind of easy to play? Yeah, it was actually really easy to pick up. I didn't really have too much struggle. I pulled pretty big packs without really having to worry about, oh, is that too many or is that too little? I didn't really have to worry about mechanics in normal setting for dungeons, so I guess on that base level you can really just go in and just kind of take everything you want to. We did run into a mob or a boss that ended up having some mechanics where he was bugging out pretty hard, but that wasn't my fault, so we couldn't finish the dungeon, but it wasn't because of my inability to tank. I know tanks are going through some crazy change, and I'm not sure if I should cover them when I talk to about you guys in this kind of first impression. There are going to be healer classes, there are going to be tank classes, and it's not something I really main all that much. I mostly have fun playing most of the DPS specializations for every single class, but this felt pretty good. Blood Death Knights felt pretty great, and they felt pretty powerful, so I think they are definitely worth checking out. Now, before I wrap out the video, I do want to ask you guys to comment below what class you would want me to check out next. I've already covered rogues of 3 specs per, I guess, a video per spec. Then I covered mages, warlocks, and hunters, and now death knights. Let me know what class you would want me to cover, and there are a lot of classes that I'm super excited, so I'll probably take like the top 3 suggestions and kind of just go off of that as my next few videos. Because Thursday is my day off, I think, as this video releases, on the day that this video releases, the Thursday video is probably going to be something else besides a class first impression. I think I'll just take a day off, maybe spend some time on BFA, some quality time, really enjoying and really learning how to play some of the classes, or simply just having some, you know, time outside of my room for a little bit, because it is my day off for streaming as well. So next video is probably going to be something like, I don't know, maybe leveling in BFA or something. It's just something simple, and then we'll get back to the first impressions. I know you guys want to see what's going on with classes, and with me being able to get the opportunity to play in the beta, I want to showcase you and explain to you what it's like to play these classes, especially ones that I usually never play on a regular basis. Thank you guys so much for watching. Overall, appreciate all of you. Thank you guys. As always, subscribing to the channel, likes, and hitting the notification bell is very much appreciated, and I'll see all of you in the next one.